Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez had this to say regarding the removal of Representative Ilhan Omar from the Foreign Affairs Committee last week.
As a fellow New Yorker, I think one of the things that we should talk about here is also one of the disgusting legacies after 9/11 has been the targeting and racism against Muslim Americans throughout the United States of America. And this is an extension of that legacy. Consistency, there is nothing consistent with the Republican Party's continued attack except for the racism and incitement of violence against women of color in this body. I had a member of the Republican caucus threaten my life, and you all and the Republican caucus rewarded him with one of the most prestigious committee assignments in this Congress. Don't tell me this is about consistency. Don't tell me that this is about a condemnation of anti-Semitic remarks when you have a member of the Republican caucus who has talked about Jewish space lasers and an entire amount of tropes and also elevated her to some of the highest committee assignments in this body. This is about targeting women of color in the United States of America. Don't tell me, because I didn't get a single apology when my life was threatened. Thank you.
Omar was removed over past comments she made regarding Israel that drew criticism from Republicans and also from some Democrats. Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib also gave her own remarks on the affair and appeared to break down in tears.
Censor Congresswoman Omar in the same week. They introduced a bill to ban federal employees from engaging in censorship. Where are the free speech warriors today? The hypocrisy is obvious to the American people. You are showing who you all are, really.
The gentlewoman's time has expired.
Omar will not be silenced.
The gentlewoman's time has expired.
Congresswoman Omar,
the gentlewoman's time has expired.
That our country is failing you today through this chamber. You belong.
The gentlewoman is no longer recognized, and the gentleman from Mississippi is recognized.
So this was Representative Omar, being taken off this committee. I think it's important to point out that she was not the only one. Eric Swalwell lost his committee assignment. Adam Schiff lost his committee assignment. I think there was greater justification for both of those. Adam Schiff being so involved in, again, what I described in my radar as really discredited ideas about Russiagate. Eric Swalwell had his connection to the alleged Chinese spy. In Ilhan Omar's case, she said things she's apologized for that I think were offensive, and people were correct to find them offensive. I actually appreciate that Ilhan Omar, unlike many Democrats, has spoken up about exactly this important issue, the weaponization of the federal government against speech rights, the FBI, et cetera. And I think maybe we would have actually benefited from her perspective, given that she seems to share some Republican concerns. So I don't agree with this decision. That said, I don't think it was an example of persecution against a Muslim or a minority or a woman so much as kind of political payback for exactly the things Democrats had done. Now, again, in her case, I don't think I agree with it. Whereas in the other two cases, I think it's perfectly justifiable. But I don't think what they're criticizing it on grounds. I don't think that's what it was about. What's your take, Batya?
Yeah, I think that Congresswoman Ilhan Omar suffers from the same problem that, Trump and many others in this era do, which is she has some really good ideas and then has an inability to stay off social media and just do the work of implementing those ideas. And unfortunately, if you're a progressive, if you're in that space, the more extreme you are on certain issues, the more socially you get rewarded, certainly on social media. And of course, that's true on the right as well. Now, I will say her comments, they were not actually about Israel. They were about Jewish Americans, which is very significantly different. I think her criticism of Israel, sometimes, I agree with it. Sometimes I don't agree with it. But the thing that they sort of tried to have this resolution against was for anti-Semitic comments against American Jews specifically. And the comparison that AOC made to Marjorie Taylor Greene, I think is a little unfair, and I'll tell you why, Robby. It was reported in the media that Marjorie Taylor Greene talked about Jewish space lasers, but she never used the word Jewish. She used the word Rothschild. And, I know a lot of people it turns out, who are not at all aware that the Rothschilds are Jewish, who are not at all aware that George Soros is Jewish. Certainly, it's not the first thing that comes to mind, because America is a fundamentally not anti-Semitic country. It's really one of the most, the country that has been the best to the Jews in our entire history, but also remains fundamentally not anti-Semitic. And so, when you're in Hungary and you say the word Rothschild, you say George Soros, there's just, centuries of anti-Semitic sentiment that's like baked into like the soil that is it's a synonym for Jews. That is simply not the case in America. I have met a lot of people who, as Marjorie Taylor Greene herself said, she had no idea that they were Jewish. And the media kept portraying it in quotes as though she had said Jewish space laser. So I think that comparison is unfair. And, in response to being called out for that, she spent a week, in Israel. She went to Yad Vashem. She really did try her best to educate herself. So the response has been very different. And so I think that comparison is not fair. But I agree with you, Robby.
Well, but didn't Omar say, she said as well, or she said recently that the all about the Benjamins comment, that she didn't know the anti-Semitic history there. So I think it's similar. Both MTG and Omar saying that the thing they said they didn't know, it had a specifically anti-Semitic context. And I guess what I would say to that is, okay, fine. So then they were just like not well-informed remarks, which is fine for most people. Like, Gina Carano shared, that was the woman, she was on The Mandalorian, and she got fired by Disney for a couple things, but she shared some image of world elites controlling people, and it has a specific potential anti-Semitic context, but I think most people, including her, would have no idea what that was. So I think that's fine for her. I guess for the people we elect to Congress, I would hold you to like a higher bar of just knowing things. Like if your excuse is, I was ignorant about that, I don't know, maybe you don't belong in Congress ultimately. I don't think you should be fired from your job. I don't think you should be unpersoned or canceled. But it's okay. Isn't it okay to have standards for the people who represented us in Congress? I don't know.
Right. I mean, I will say I do think there's a difference between, saying something about someone and not knowing they're Jewish, and then saying, basically implying Jews do things because they're money hungry and not knowing that that's offensive, right? Like those are very different things, right? She said it's all about the Benjamins, meaning they do this because they love money, and then said, I didn't realize that was a trope, meaning I didn't realize it was offensive to imply that. So those are very different. But at the end of the day, I agree with you, Robby. I think that her quote unquote speech crimes, whatever they may be, are very different from, Eric Swalwell and Adam Schiff, who really, what they did really went beyond simply their opinions, however offensive they may be. And so it really, and I think it would have been to the Republicans' credit to make that distinction. So it was very clear that this was not personal, that this was not, right, just about revenge, right? Because now, by including her, they really opened themselves up to that criticism.
What was AOC talking about with respect to the threat against her life from a fellow?
I think she was talking about Paul Gosar,
the Paul Gosar
the animated video, yes, yeah. Which I mean. Yeah,
which was very bad, but he was punished for that, wasn't he? I thought he was punished, and they were talking.
He was punished by the Democrats, Robby. Yes, they were, but so he was taken off his committee assignments by the Democrats, which this is sort of viewed very much, and even admitted. Byron Donalds admitted that this was an act of revenge, which I mean, I'm not sure it's inappropriate to take revenge, on this unprecedented move that Nancy Pelosi took, which was to punish people from the other party by removing them from their committee seats.
Yeah. Look, I take her point that, she's the subject of a lot of negative press coverage from the right. I'm sure it often gets heated. I'm sure she, like everyone else in public life, probably you, probably me sometimes, I'm sure her at a, much greater scale, obviously. But the reality is, if you're in public life, you get a lot of criticism. Sometimes it's nasty. Sometimes it's unpleasant. Sometimes it's vaguely threatening. Sometimes it's actually threatening. Usually it does not reflect an actual threat to your life. You can 99% of the nasty comments you get, you can totally disregard and know that there's not going to be any follow through on it. But I appreciate that she, wants the rhetoric toned down. I'm not sure, accusing Republicans of or like everyone of being that she disagrees with here being like racist and sexist and anti-Muslim, and there was a lot of anti-Muslim fervor after 9/11. There were like bad policy decisions made. I think to equate this with that is frankly kind of insulting to the people who were harmed by like the Patriot Act and the no-fly list and the ground zero, all that kind of stuff. This is clearly not in keeping with that, in my view. But obviously, people can reach different conclusions if they like. Yeah,
absolutely. I do think what was very interesting to me was, I feel like 2 years ago, 3 years ago, Representative AOC and Representative Tlaib saying that this is about racism would have had like a real impact. Everybody, that narrative would have been sort of nonstop in the mainstream leftist media. But now it sort of falls it seems a bit performative, right? These speeches, and they were, that performativity, I think, stems from the fact that the public conversation has moved on. We're no longer in this sort of the fervor of the moral panic around race that we were in 2 years ago, 3 years ago. I think it's become clear that, most Black Americans don't see race the way that, white leftist progressives do, and that this, the squad really is sort of much more the patron saints of this sort of, elite college educated set more than the sort of the populations that they claim to be representing. And so to me, these sort of, even though I agree with you and I agree with them that, I don't think that Ilhan Omar should have been taken off her committee assignments, at the same time, their attempt to racialize that, to me, seemed to sort of fall a little bit flat, and I take comfort in that.
Absolutely. All right, we'll have more Rising in just a minute. Stay with us.